Shall I bring up the verse on my screen or I'll just read it from here? It's the first time I'm doing online.
You can just read from your book or
Okay.
screen. No need to share.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So we'll do some opening invocations and then we'll be reading from 10th Canto, chapter 87, text 25. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamirayet Nastapaya Subhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Utimashloke Bhakti Bhagavati Nashtake. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer the respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and as well as Srila Vyasadeva, the author. I'd also like to offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, who, and his sincere followers, by whose grace we have access to this sublime transcendental wisdom. Let's see. By regular attendance on classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the hearts is almost completely destroyed, and thus loving service unto the personality of God who is praised by transcendental songs, like Adi Purusha's morning orchestra, is established as a irrevocable fact. All right. So again, we are reading from 10th Canto, chapter 87, text 25. I'll go ahead and move into the translation because it is quite an extensive purport and a lot of Sanskrit. Translation: supposed authorities who declare that matter is the origin of existence, that the permanent qualities of the soul can be destroyed, that the self is compounded of separate aspects of spirit and matter, and that that material transactions constitute reality. All such authorities base their teachings on mistaken ideas that hide the truth. The dualistic conception that the living entity is produced from the three modes of nature is simply a product of ignorance. Such a conception has no real basis in you, for you are transcendental to all illusion and always enjoy perfect total awareness. Okay, we have a very long purport. So we'll go ahead and try to go through that nicely and concisely, and I will take the liberty of skipping the Sanskrit. Purport. The true position of the Supreme Personality is a sublime mystery, as is also the dependent position of the Jiva soul. Most thinkers are mistaken in one way or another about these truths, since there are countless varieties of false designation that can cover the soul and create illusion. Foolish conditioned souls submit to uh, obvious delusions, but the illusory power of Maya can easily subvert the intelligence of even the most sophisticated philosophers and mystics. Thus, there are always diverted schools of thought propounding conflicting theories concerning basic principles of truth. In traditional Indian philosophy, the followers of Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Sankhya, Yoga, and Mimamsa philosophies all have their own erroneous ideas, which the personified Vedas point out in this prayer. The Vaisheshikas say that the visible universe is created from an original stock of atoms, as Kannada Rishis, Vaisheshika Sutras state that which is of the smallest size, the atom, is eternal. And his followers also postulate eternality for other non-atomic entities, okay, including the souls who become embodied and even a supreme soul. But in the Vaisheshika cosmology, the souls and the supersoul play only token roles in the atomic production of the universe. Srila Krishna Dvaipayana Vedavyas criticizes this position in his Vedanta Sutra. According to this sutra, one cannot claim that at the time of creation, atoms first combined together because they are impelled by some karmic impulse adhering in the atoms themselves. Since atoms by themselves in their primeval state before combining into complex objects have no ethical responsibility that might lead them to acquire pious or sinful reactions, nor can the initial combination of atoms be explained as a result of the residual karma of the living entities who lie dormant prior to creation. Since these reactions are each jiva's own and cannot be transferred from them even to other jivas, what to speak of inert atoms? Good argument. Alternatively, the phrase janim asata can be taken to allude to the yoga philosophy of Patanjali Rishi, inasmuch as his Yoga Sutras teach one how to achieve the transcendental status of Brahmanhood by a mechanical process of exercise and meditation. Patanjali's yoga method is here called asat because it ignores the essential aspect of devotion, surrender to the will of the Supreme Person. As Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 17:28, anything done as a sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and in the next. The Yoga Sutras acknowledge the personality of Godhead in a oblique way, but only a helper whom the advancing yogi can but only as a helper whom the advancing yogi can utilize. Devotional meditation on God is yet another means of achieving concentration. In contrast, Bhadran, I don't want to say that, sorry. Vedavyasa's philosophy of Vedanta emphasizes devotional service not only as the primary means to liberation, but also as identical with liberation itself. A prayanat tatrapi hi drishtam. Worship of the Lord continues up to the point of liberation and indeed goes on in the liberated state, also as the Vedas reveal. Gautama Rishi in his Nayana Sutras proposed that one can attain liberation by negating both illusion and unhappiness. Quote, by successfully dispelling false conceptions, bad character, entangling action, rebirth, and misery, the disappearance of one of these allowing the disappearance of the next, one can achieve final liberation. But since Naina philosophers believe that awareness is not an essential quality of the soul, they teach that a liberated soul has no consciousness. The Naina idea of liberation thus puts the soul in the condition of a dead stone. This attempt by the Naina philosophers to kill the soul's innate consciousness is here called Sato Mritam by the personified Vedas. But the Vedanta Sutra 2.317 unequivocally states, Yota Iva, the soul, the Jiva soul is always a knower. Although the soul is in truth both conscious and active, the proponents of Sankhya philosophy wrongly separate these two functions of the living force, ascribing consciousness to the soul and activity to material nature. Quote, thus, since the apparent differences between Purushas are only superficial, being due to the various modes of nature that cover them, the Purusha's true status is proven to be that of a witness, characterized by his separateness, his passive indifference, his status of being an observer, and his inactivity. Thus, by contact with the soul, the unconscious subtle body seems to be conscious, while the soul appears to be the doer, although he is aloof from the activity of nature's modes. Srila Vyasadeva refutes this idea in the section of the Vedanta Sutra that begins Karta Shastrarta Vat. The Jiva soul must be a performer of actions because the injunctions of scripture must have some purpose, Acharya Baladev. Vidyabhushana in his Govindabhasya explains, quote, the jiva, not the modes of nature, is the doer. Why? Because the injunctions of scripture must have some purpose. For example, such scriptural injunctions as sarga kamo yajit, one who desires to attain heaven should perform ritual sacrifice, and atmanam eva lokam upaste bridhad Aranyaka, Upanishad 1:4-15. One should worship with the aim of attaining the spiritual kingdom. Are meaningful only if a conscious doer exists. If the modes of nature were the doer, these statements would serve no purpose. After all, scriptural injunctions engage the living entity in performing prescribed actions by convincing him that he can act to bring about certain enjoyable results. Such a mentality cannot be aroused in the inert modes of nature. Okay. Gaimini Rishi, in his Purva Mimamsa Sutras, presents material work and its results as the whole of reality. He and later proponents of Karma Mimamsa philosophy teach that material existence is endless, that there is no liberation. For them, For them, the cycle of karma is perpetual. And the best one can aim for is higher birth among the demigods. That's unfortunate. Therefore, they say the whole purpose of the Vedas is to engage human beings in rituals for creating good karma, and consequently, the material soul's prime responsibility is to ascertain the exact meaning of the Vedas, scriptural injunctions, and to execute them. Quote, duty is that which is indicated by the injunctions of the Vedas. And quote, the Vedic Vedanta Sutra, however, especially in the 4th chapter, which deals with life's ultimate goal, elaborately describes the soul's potential for achieving liberation from birth and death, while it subordinates ritual sacrifice to the role of helping one become qualified to receive spiritual knowledge. As stated there, quote, the Agnihotra and other Vedic sacrifices are meant only for producing knowledge, as the statements of the Vedas show, end quote. And the very last words of the Vedanta Sutra proclaim the liberated soul never returns to this world, as promised by the revealed scripture. Thus, the fallacious conclusions of the speculative philosophers prove that even great scholars and sages are often bewildered by the misuse of their own God-given intelligence. As the Katha Upanishad says, caught in the grip of ignorance, self-proclaimed experts consider themselves learned authorities. They wander about this world befooled, like the blind leading the blind. Of the 6 orthodox philosophies of Vedic tradition, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta, only the Vedanta of Badrayana, sorry, I'm saying that wrong, Vyas is free of error, and even that only as properly explained by the bona fide Vaishnavacharyas. Each of the 6 schools, nonetheless, makes some practical contribution to Vedic education. Atheistic Sankhya explains the evolution of natural elements from subtle to gross. Patanjali's Yoga describes the 8-fold methods of meditation. Nyaya sets forth the techniques of logic. Vaisheshika considers the basic metaphysical categories of reality. And Mimamsa establishes the standard tools of scriptural interpretations. Apart from these 6, there are also the more deviant philosophies of the Buddhists, Jains, and Charvakas, whose theories of voidism and materialism deny the spiritual integrity of the eternal soul. Ultimately, the only perfectly reliable source of knowledge is God himself. Haribol. The personality of Godhead is Avabodha Rasa, the infinite reservoir of unfailing vision. To those who depend on him with absolute conviction, he grants the divine eye of knowledge. Others, following their own speculative theories, must grope for the truth through the obscuring curtain of Maya. Srila Sridhar Swami prays, quote, For the bewildered soul, wandering within the darkness of those exalted philosophies promoted by the harsh methods of false logic, the path of true knowledge of you, O Lord of magnificent glory, remains invisible. O Lord of Madhu, husband of the goddess of fortune, when will I become liberated by joyfully chanting your names? Madhava, Vamana, Sri Nayana, Sri Shankar, Sripati, and Govinda. All right, we made it. So I will offer a few prayers and then we'll read the verse again and try to share some discussion on this. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshuramitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay. So once again, the translation. Supposed authorities who declare that matter is the origin of existence, that permanent qualities of the soul can be destroyed, that the self is compounded of separate aspects of spirit and matter, or that material transactions constitute reality. All such authorities base their teachings on mistaken ideas that hide the truth. The dualistic conception that the living entity is produced of the three modes of nature is simply a product of ignorance. Such a conception has no real basis in you, for you are transcendental to all illusion and always enjoy perfect total awareness. So to start, I just want to appreciate our acharyas and Srila Prabhupada for really summarizing what appears to be an unlimited ocean of philosophical theories and possibilities of what the truth is, and that our acharyas very kindly have swum through this unlimited knowledge and deliver the concise essence. Sarmadhamma Vritya Jamami Kamsha Navrajaham Tamsa Papetyo Moksha Ishami Masucha. Instead of swimming through what is stated to be the alligator-like ocean of various philosophies and theories and misconceptions, trying to understand the truth. This is stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Adi Lila very nicely. Just that the acharyas make it so easy to know the truth that even a unknowing child can come to the ultimate conclusions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by giving oral reception to the words of these spiritual masters. So it's very much appreciating that Srila Prabhupada has delivered this essence in a very concise, easy to understand way. Personally, I remember thinking that when I was in high school going into college that, I really want to study every conclusion in the world. I want to know about every, practice and philosophy and religion. And then once I study all of them, then I can make my decision about what is the truth. Luckily, Krishna saw some sense of sincerity in me, and thus, through his agent, Srila Prabhupada delivered me his books in the form of Science of Self-Realization and Bhagavad Gita as it is, ironically standing right next to me. So that's a nice sign. So like this, what would otherwise take many, many lifetimes, as is stated in Bhagavad Gita, after many, many lifetimes, one comes to the conclusion that Krishna is the source of everything and is to be known and loved. So instead of having to go through millions of more lifetimes, Krishna very kindly gave me the conclusion this very life itself. Let's see. Itself is compounded by separate items. There was one point I was wanting to mention. Let me just read this verse one more time. Suppose authorities declare that the matter is original in existence, that the permanent qualities of the soul can be destroyed, that the self is compounded of separate aspects of spirit and matter, or the material transactions constitute reality. Yes, okay, so this is a really important point. here, because one might ask, oh, but all these different theories could have some basis. They could be correct. They could be this. They could be that. But here the verse is very nicely stating all such authorities base their teachings on mistaken ideas that hide the truth. So what happens if we have a very elaborate mathematical equation? It's very important if you have that equation that the seed, how do you say, the seed equation is accurate. Because if you start an elaborate series of equations and your seed equation is off, then the entire rest of the conclusions will be off. And so, as we see, a very elaborately written purport, which we are very grateful to the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for going through such depth of study and thereby presenting such, I'm sure, what is actually a very concise conclusion to all these various philosophies. We can see that in the purport, it's described that there are various aspects that are true and helpful in the analysis of various aspects of the universe. However, because they are based on incorrect equations, they thus come to incorrect conclusions. And one might ask why there are so many different levels of these philosophies. And it's understood that Krishna says that he reciprocates with one as the approach. And so if they are wanting this kind of conclusion or that kind of conclusion, there's a philosophy for that. It's like a supermarket store philosophy. It's like, you want to believe that you're not an eternal soul? We have a philosophy for that. Like, you want to, merge into the impersonal void? We have a philosophy for that. So, there's a little bit of something for everyone. But those who want to know the truth, those who want to understand the highest reality as revealed by the scriptures, there is also the philosophy for that. There is the supreme conclusion. And Krishna says in 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Desham Satyatam Yukidam Bhajitam Pratipurvakam Dadami Buddhi Yogantam Yenamam Upayantite. That those who actually are sincerely desiring to know the absolute truth, who are serving in a mood of love and affection, to that person, Krishna reveals the truth and guides them by which they can come to understand that truth. So this is the grace of Krishna. He makes everything very simple. He's in the heart of everyone. He knows their desires and he reciprocates accordingly. So now to actually enter into our class today. The principle is to receive that knowledge under the guidance, but to receive it nonetheless. Okay. And we're not, by knowledge, we'll get more into what we're referring to by knowledge. It doesn't have to be this elaborate ocean of relative knowledge, but the spiritual knowledge, the knowledge of that spiritual dimension. Because right now we see all these philosophies are just in regards to this relative world, but there is so much more even in the spiritual dimension. And our acharyas very, very kindly give us deep descriptions into that realm. And so to begin, we can think of, to begin with 6 minutes left, we can think of our spiritual journey in terms of 100-mile hike. 100-mile hike. So if we're going on a hike and we are wanting to get to that 100-mile mark, it requires that one, we walk in the right direction. Ideally, we walk with a group, and also that we have a guide who has walked further along that path than ourselves. And the difficulty that we see in this hike and in the world is that we have imperfect perception. Imperfect perception. So I can't hear what's going on in France. I can't even see what's going on the other side of the wall. And so because we have these imperfect perceptions, when we take those imperfect perceptions to the philosophies of life, we are bound to come up with inconclusive conclusions, which makes it not a conclusion. If your conclusion is inconclusive, then that's not a very good conclusion. So, and the reason for that is just that material nature is geared that way. When we come into the world, material means that there is limitation. The apara prakriti composed of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, mind, intelligence, and false sense of self is geared to not have these perfect conclusions, to have these material limitations, which makes it the difference between material and spiritual. So thus the world is perfectly functioning in its imperfect way. It's perfect imperfection. And so the real solution for that is to receive descending knowledge. Descending knowledge, because if we try to have ascending knowledge, if we just are on this high 100-mile mark and we just try to guess which direction is the right direction, which direction to go, what thing to do, we're not ever really sure if we've ever attained the goal. There's nothing to really give us that assuredness. But when it's descending knowledge, when it comes from that source that already knows, and then it comes down to us, then we can know for sure, because we're hearing from someone who, we're hearing from a source that's actually authorized, a source that is free from these imperfect perceptions. And so if we want to go on a 100-mile mark, it's a lot easier to receive guidance from someone who has attained that goal. Right. And so in connection with this 100-mile mark of our spiritual life, in this Gaudiya Brahma Vaishnava Sampradaya, Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, it is quite frequently expressed that that 100-mile mark for us is not the impersonal void of the Brahma Jyoti. And even beyond that, it's not Paramatma realization, nor is it even residence in a planet in the spiritual realm, a Vaikuntha Loka. In the Gaudiya Brahma, Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, there is the primary focus through many, many acharyas to attain residence in the topmost spiritual abode, Krishna Loka. Krishna Loka, the eternal planet of Sri Vrindavan Dham. And now we could see that there was such a myriad of different philosophies just to do with this material world, which Krishna says that the energy in this material world is only a quarter of what's there in the spiritual world. Actually, 3/4 of the potency is expressed in that spiritual realm. And 3/4 of the eternal and unlimited is still unlimited. So even in this material realm. So we can see that we can get caught up in so many different philosophies just in the material world. Then however will one come to understand the transcendental knowledge of the spiritual dimension? This is why my friends, we're very, very fortunate to have, I'm looking at this Srimad Bhagavatam set next to me, to have such a concise description of the unlimited realm, that this knowledge is just freely here and in such a way, described in such a way that even one of 5 years of age can come to comprehend the unlimited eternal spiritual dimension. How fantastic is that? How profound is that? That as we see, I mean, just even reading that, it was like such a dense level of philosophy just to do with the material world. But the Charyas have so kindly put into song, into concise language, into approachable, understandable English, from Sanskrit to Bengali, to understandable English about the transcendental nature of Vrindavan. That Narottam Das Thakur is singing Vrindavana Ramya Stana Divya Chinta Manidama Ratana Mandira Manohara. That beautiful Vrindavan is filled with Chintamani jewels. That it has the beautiful groves. Beautiful Vrindavan is filled with Chintamani gems and many jewel palaces and temples. He goes into full description of the transcendental glory and nectar of the eternal abode of Sri Vrindavan Dham and all of the associates there. This transcendental knowledge, this knowledge that is beyond the material scope, is readily available to us. And so the principle for this class is that we should receive that knowledge. It's there waiting for us. The understanding about who Krishna is in his most sweetest nature, his Tribhanga form, playing the flute and peacock feather, this Madhurya Gyan, this knowledge about his sweetness, this knowledge about his activities, this knowledge about his names, Govinda, Madhava, Keshava, glorifying these different qualities. Srila Rupa Goswami and Upadeshamrita advises that when one is ready, that the essence of all advice is to engage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the chanting and hearing of Krishna's qualities and pastimes. Right? So we have to understand this goal. If we're on a 100-mile hike, we have to know what's ahead. So when we're walking that path, we can see landmarks, we can get confirmation, we have a guide who's bringing us along. We have to understand what the goal is. Otherwise, how are we going to know we have attained it? Otherwise, we might get to 10-mile mark and think we've reached it, we've gotten the goal. But that is a direct expression of a misconception or illusion, as we use the term popularly. It's an illusion if we think, if we're on our way from California to New York and we get to Nevada and we think, all right, we made it to New York. That's objectively an illusion. Right? So we have to have proper guides. We have to know what the goal looks like, and we have to have proper guides. Because the guide will keep us from trying to jump prematurely to a higher knowledge than we're ready to receive. And they'll be able to dispel any illusion about our level of progress, perhaps. We think, oh, did we make it yet? We're at 10-mile mark. No, actually, we have 90 more miles to go, but you're doing good. Continue on. Or, oh, I want to know more about what's there at the 100-mile mark. And you say, oh, be patient. One of my mentors is like, I'm like, oh, what about this? What about that? He's like, just be patient, continue to read, continue to study, continue to chant. These revelations will come in time. But it's important that we know what the goal is. And to allude more to that goal, Srila Rupa Goswami writes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Actually, we learned this in Mayapur Institute from His Grace, Padmanaya Prabhu, who revealed to us that Srila Rupa Goswami writes the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu for the specific purpose of attaining Vrindavan Krishna. Not to attain a Vaikuntha planet, not to merge into the Brahmajyoti, not even to attain Lord Ram of Ayodhya or even Krishna of Dwarka. He writes Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhus for the specific purpose of attaining the 100-mile mark of Krishna in Vrindavan. Krishna in Vrindavan. So we should come to know about these things when we're ready. But knowing that that is our goal, knowing that that is what we're striving to understand and relish, to be able to qualify ourselves to relish these pastimes of Vrindavan, to understand the moods and the natures and the relationships and the activities and the sweetness of Vrindavan. Our whole life should be geared towards that goal. And if we don't develop that desire, first, we can't desire something that we don't know about, right? So first we have to qualify ourselves to know about these things. And from immersing in that under guidance, we have to develop lolyam, an intense desire, an intense greed to attain Vrindavan Krishna. And thus, it's quite a nice life, pious, devotional life to live according to regulated principles and chanting names of the divine. It's a really excellent lifestyle. But Krishna says, to the degree that one approaches me, I reciprocate. And so he doesn't force us to receive that which we don't desire. And thus desire is the key to the success of our spiritual life. And if we want that 100-mile mark, it's nice if we get to 70 or 80 or 90, but if we want that 100-mile mark, then we have to develop a sufficient desire to receive it. And so the principle for this class, and I'll say in conclusion, is to receive that knowledge under guidance, but receive it. Receive it. So if we're on a hike and we have a travel guide, it is important to stay close to them. It's important that they are qualified to guide us up to that 100-mile mark, and that we develop that sincere desire to hear and know about that goal and to sincerely strive in that direction. All of our sadhana, all our bhajan, everything should be leading towards the intensifying of that desire of attaining that 100-mile mark, which our acharya is very enthusiastically share their heart and their desire for the 100-mile mark of Krishna in Vrindavan. Okay, so I will end there. Of course, there's always much more to say, but I will end there at 7:50. Thank you for this opportunity to attempt to glorify Krishna and his devotees. Please forgive me for anything that was incorrect, and anything that was nice is of the glory of my teachers. And thank you very much again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Manohara Prabhu. Have you always been like that? Transcendental, equipoised, peaceful, satisfied?
From a philosophical point, the soul is always supposed to be like that. From a relative perspective, certainly not. Still working on doing that now, but a lot better than I was before.
Cool, cool. Thank you for sharing that with us, the mood and the knowledge, of course. Thank you, Prabhu. Mike has his hand up.
Hare Krishna, good morning. It's always so sweet when you give class. I do appreciate it greatly. I just have a slight conflict in my mind with one of the words used in the purport when the person that was writing it used the word sat and asat for Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, saying that they were atheistic when, at least to my complete understanding, which I've studied it pretty heavily, and I think Jamuna Jaya at one point said she attended a lecture through Edwin Bryant too, the professor. He describes the Yoga Sutras as theistic, not atheistic. So, and if you, it just takes a short, so, and it's, you know, so that was my question there. Why would was it just, and even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna at one point talks about the lost method of attaining him, which a lot of people refer to the Ashtanga Yoga path. So is it just that the person writing the purport had never studied that and was solely focused on a bhakti point of view? So that's just the conflict in my mind right now with that, the sat sat.
Okay, yeah, I can share some thoughts, but it seems like Jamuna Jaya raised her hand. It might be in conjunction to this.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Manohara Class. Yeah, yeah, Mike. That you know, because I talk about the Yoga Sutras a lot and study with Professor Edward Bryant. I do want to just say what Mike said is, yeah, what Professor Bryant points out in his commentary is that even in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, it said that it is Yoga Sutras is a theistic text, but the difference is, and this is what Professor Bryant says, this is what I point out when I always speak about it, is exactly what they said in the purport, that it is that the Ashtanga yogis considered it a crutch. It's just like another method. It's almost like Isvara Pranidhanini, though it is mentioned a lot in the Yoga Sutras, and Patanjali even writes down that the Ishvara is a special soul, but they consider it just another limb, like asana, like pranayama. And it's that old thing of what Prabhupada, there's a story that I heard once that Prabhupada was walking and one of his disciples gave them his hand, and Prabhupada held onto it to step over a rock. And then Prabhupada hid it away, or a stick, like something like that. And Prabhupada said that that's kind of what the Ashtanga yogis do. They're using, as far as Pranidhani, they're using their connection with the divine like a prop. I don't need it anymore because I was just going to use this connection with a higher power to soothe my mind, because what I want is liberation. So that's what I've always heard Professor Bryant say, that it was like, it is theistic, but it's almost like it's God. It's non-different from downward facing dog in a way. So yeah, I heard that too. So yeah, that's what I've heard Professor Bryant say. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Is that satisfying, Fugu?
Yes and no, if I want to be 100% honest. It's satisfying on one front. I understand what Jamuna Jaya is saying. But if you strip everything away from modern yoga, what we're using it as, isn't that, if the point of the spear is Krishna and the shaft of the spear is stillness and pranayam, isn't it still directing you towards the same point?
That's a good point. I will just be forthright that my field of study isn't in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras so much, but I can speak to the level of understanding I have from classes I've heard on this topic. Like Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, it's a lot about intention. You know, like if your intention is to attain the goal and you're using this method, then okay, you can lead that towards a theistic measure. But certainly not everybody who is performing yoga asanas has that as their goal or has that realization. And so that's something for food for thought. I mean, like you mentioned, if Krishna is at the tip of that spear, then yes, all of these things can be used to facilitate that. Even in Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, it talks about using different breathing methods and things like this to facilitate the control of the mind in their practice of meditation. Because although we are spiritual beings, we live in a material body for now. And so we're using that material body as a vehicle. And so keeping it healthy is part of, you know, living in that body and using it to get to our destination, just like one will take care of the car, even though they realize they're not the car, but they want to drive the car from California to New York. So it's probably good if we take care of it. So it really depends on attention. Like Jamuna mentioned, if it's just being used as a crutch to merge into the impersonal aspects, then from that lens, one could say that, okay, that's, I've heard in different commentaries that, yeah, there's argument towards that being a atheistic philosophy, because a theistic means that there's a supreme God that we take shelter of. And so in the purport, the key note there was about it being with love and devotion. With love and devotion. We don't really, it's not bhakti if there's not love. It's bhakti yoga because there's love. Krishna doesn't even accept the food offerings if there's not love. Pacham pusham phalam toyam yome bhakti prayachiti. It's like, okay, the offering can be very meager, just a leaf of flower, water, or fruit, but the main ingredient is the love that's there. Right? So in any practice, what to speak about yoga asanas, if it's lacking that purpose of connecting with the divine, then perhaps it'll fall short of a sat practice, an eternal practice of the soul with the divine.
I like the last part you put in, that it has to be done with love. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Haribo. So, whoever asked the question, like, was the question saying that the purport says Patanjali Yoga has atheistic philosophy?
Yes.
The purport does not say Patanjali as atheistic.
Did it not?
No.
Can you read to us? You have
each of the six schools nonetheless makes some practical contribution to Vedic education. Atheistic Sankhya explains the evolution of natural elements from subtle to gross. Patanjali's yoga describes the eightfold method of meditation. Nyaya sets forth the techniques of logic. Vaisheshika considers the basic metaphysical categories of reality. And Mimamsa establishes the standard tools for scriptural interpretation. So I don't see the purport is saying Patanjali as atheistic. It is saying Sankhya as atheistic.
I believe it was earlier in the purport when it's describing Patanjali directly. It used
where?
We're still looking. It's quite a long purport. If you have the find tool, that would be probably more efficient. Okay, there's 9.
There is only one atheistic in the whole page in my search.
Jeff Rickler, Prabhu, did you Google it? Did you search by the word?
I don't see it, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Was it not atheistic, but asat, I think was the term.
Asat.
Yeah, there is very difference between those two terms.
Maybe you could explain that,
Krishna. So different.
Yeah, please go, Shem. It says, inasmuch as his Yoga Sutras teach one how to achieve the transcendental status of Brahmanhood by mechanical process of exercise and meditation, Patanjali's yoga method is here called asat because it ignores the essential aspect of devotion, surrender to the will of the Supreme Person. And then it quotes Bhagavad Gita, anything done as a sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, Osatapartha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and in the next.
Yeah, that is different from atheistic. That's all I want to emphasize.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
I see Adipusha Prabhu's glowing, effulgent face. Okay, it's darshan time. Darshan time. Time to turn on the camera. It's time to unblur the background. Thank you, Manohara ji, Prabhu.
Thank you all.
Lowest peak of prosperity master the only way by which we can thank for the devotional service. I walk this lowest peak with great honor. Let us grace and cross the ocean, shield suffering, and obtain my only wish is to have a consciousness that is emanating from his lotus mind. The passion for his lotus feet is a perfect and full resolve as an eyes. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. Read my Lord word after word, from an ecstatic frame and things. Lack of ignorance is destroyed. Vedic scriptures sing this character. I switch the master's devotion of my field and over and the Lord master of his devotees. O Master, be merciful and make him your share to Lotus feet, your fame spread all over the free world.
Thank you very much, Temple Room. Nandini Radhika Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to the Afterglow. Manohar Prabhu, you have a few minutes.
I do.
Min has her hand up. Thank you, Prabhu.
I just want to ask which verse we were reading this morning. I came a little late and I missed it.
Yes, we were reading from 10th Canto, chapter 87, verse 25.
Okay, thank you very much.
Krishna Kumari Devi?
Krishna Kumari, how is your challenge going? One of the first items on Krishna Kumari's challenge is taking freshly picked berries. That's a very challenging item on the list.
That's going to help with the mind, just doing stuff that's very simple. It's actually hard for me. There's endless black calves in my backyard. I won't get to them. There's mulberries. I can't do just nothing. It seems like. Anyway, I was wondering from the beginning of the purport, I used to hear a lot that the word Adam comes from the word Atma. So I was looking it up after class, and it seems that like they just give the reference that the word Adam comes from the Greek word, which means can't be cut. But I was just thinking of that first kind of, I was trying to envision the first group that you spoke about, how they think like everything just comes from these atoms, But this is also, Krishna. Krishna is in every atom, Anyway, it's just interesting that, Krishna can show up for all of us. And I wish Mike was still here, but I know when I did my yoga teacher training, maybe 20 years ago, I also was really excited that like Ishwara was in Patanjali's verses. And it's like, the devotee, he's a devotee. When you see Krishna's showing up somehow, then you're like, oh, I can relax, I can read this. So, so I was just thinking, Krishna, it's not that these philosophies are necessarily false, right? They're just not bringing us to that love and devotion. And I think you really like beautifully, where you went with that purport into just pure Vrindavan love and bliss was like, wow, we're so lucky that we get to go there. Thank you, Manohar.
Thank you. I appreciate that note of really bringing everything in connection with Krishna, like you mentioned, the atom. And this is real kind of transcendental vision where everything that we see can remind us of that beautiful place, Vrindavan. And thus our whole consciousness becomes like Vrindavan. And our acharyas have written like that. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in one song, he went to his home and one day it was Vaikuntha, it was the spiritual world. He saw how everything was connected with Krishna. And so like that, if we can live in that space, then we'll be in Vrindavan in this world and we'll be sure to go there in the next world as well. Thank you for that.
Cool. Thank you. Jamuna Jaya.
Hare Krishna. Just Krishna Kumari made me think of one other thing, and then I'll shut up. It's just when I think about the Yoga Sutras, that same thing, Krishna Kumari, because it's like the concept of Ishvara Pranidhana is brought up more times than any other concept really in the Yoga Sutras, except for that you're not the body. So it's so interesting. But one of the things that I've heard people say is that in Krishna himself, kind of in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about all the systems of yoga, but he says bhakti is the highest. And so what I've heard Professor Bryant probably and some other commentators say is that, Ashtanga yoga gets you to the place of like, you're in this nice white room and everything's really peaceful. But it's that analogy of, what we always say, like if you're drowning, the first gulp of water is like, but then 5 minutes, what do you want? I want my family. I want life. Da, da, da. And so it's sort of like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras can take you to the place of being a sattvic mind. But I always think that Krishna is tricky because once you get to see your soul, then then it's like, aha, but I'm here. That the soul is more than just to be sattvic. It's that the soul has relationship and it's to be loving. And that's really where it begins. That Ashtangis can get that peacefulness of mind because we would say you don't want to stop at sattva. Sattva is the springboard. So I was just being reminded of that it can get you to the place where, okay, I'm calm. Oh, but there's more because as we always say, there's something higher than peace, and that's love. So I was just reminded of that as you were speaking. Hare Krishna.
Also, for those who don't know, Edwin Bryan is a Gaudiya Vaishnava. His name is Adwaita. Just, I know a lot of devotees quote him. Back in the early 90s, we used to do programs at his home in Manhattan. It was a lot of fun. Just sharing that.
Cool. Edwin Bryan Prabhu Ki Jai. He helped a lot of devotees on their path. Let's glorify this wonderful Vaishnava. So yeah, when we are in that white room, let's put a tulsi plant. Let's put something, a speaker, and play Maha Mantra. Yeah, it doesn't stop at the white room. Okay, Krishna Mobile is here. Adipusha Prabhu, welcome. You haven't spoken yet, correct? The class feels incomplete.
Hare Krishna. Well, there's a lot of ideas on the table, and
So what's your take on yoga and postures and Ashtanga and all those things? Have you transcended all that?
Manohara explained it very simply and clearly that Krishna is so wonderful that he allows people to select an orbit and a degree of understanding based on, how sincerely they want the complete truth. So there are people that are relatively nibbling around the edges and understanding, and a lot of speculation. But ultimately, Prabhupada explains very clearly, life comes from life. They're thinking that this combination of molecules will somehow or other become a living entity. But no, you can only get a blade of grass from a living plant. They cannot produce one cell, one living cell with all their factories. So Krishna is the goal, and understanding Krishna and loving Krishna is the essence. And like he mentioned so many things. Without love, Bhagavatam says, what is the use of control of the mind, control of the senses, the power of speech without devotional service? It's useless. So many zeros. Jito, Prabhupada says. Jito. But you put the one in front of it when it's the intention is there for understanding Krishna. Otherwise, all these things are useless. Even not only do they not work, karma kanda, jnana kanda, kevala visharabandha, that they are like pots of poison that they destroy our devotional service. So they can be stepping stones or they can be stumbling blocks. But
Interesting.
Krishna is so wonderful that if we do want the truth, Manohara quoted that verse, Savasha Shaham Mridisani Visto Matas Metyugyanam Bodham Cha, in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is in the heart. Krishna sees even the most subtle thought in the deepest corner of our heart, the most subtle desire. And if we want knowledge, then Krishna will bring us to the point of seeing him and being with him. But if we want forgetfulness, he'll let us go on in our half awake or completely unconscious condition. Krishna's there, reciprocating. I'm talking too much. What did you want to say?
Mahaprabhu, you wanted to say anything?
No, that was great. I was just relishing
Yeah,
Adipuru's
yeah.
activity.
Sometimes I personally think, Krishna, why do you have to reciprocate accordingly? Why don't you just reciprocate bluntly? I am the Supreme Personality of God. Everything else is false. Stop it. Why can't he just be straightforward? Why does he have to reciprocate? Oh, if you go here, you can take
Because
this
love is
path and that path.
voluntary.
It's just confusing.
Love is voluntary.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
This isn't like some dictatorial, situation like in some of these countries where the government just tells you what to do. This is a free choice. Krishna allows us to freely come at our own pace. And we are imitating, we are representing the super soul. Krishna's there. Just think like that illustration in the Bhagavad Gita, the two birds in the tree. In the body of the tree, there are two birds, the super soul and the soul. And the super soul just watches and waits for the bird who's madly chasing after the bitter fruits and the sweet fruits,
That's Jeffrey Eckler. Just a small clarification.
quietly waits. So we can do that also. But we're ready to speak and we are reaching out.
Thank you, Adipusha Prabhu. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, if it's okay if not. Okay. Jeffrey says easily distracted and occupied bird. Yeah, very busy bird. Very busy bird. Yeah. Okay, Karen, Isaiah, and Annabelle. It's your turn.
Muted.
We can hear you, Isaiah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Isaiah. It was perfect. Thank you. Bye bye, Isaiah. Bye bye, Manohar Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Right there. Oh, it's gone now. Let it go.
Isaiah, Hare Krishna. Nice seeing you, dear devotees.
Oh no, I'm still good.
This is such an inspiration seeing your bright faces. Unbelievable. This is our fuel. Okay, Hare Krishna.